Well, Scott Morrison has some explaining to do. His decision to take charge of 6 government ministries without telling the public, the Parliament, or even his own cabinet is the kind of captain's call that could sink the Titanic. Scott Morrison's apology is welcome, but there's much more we must be told, however painful that may be for Morrison and those around him. His decision to share the health portfolio with Greg Hunt at the start of the crisis can be justified, arguably. We didn't know much in March 2020. We didn't know, for instance, that the early modelling would be so hopelessly wrong and our health service would have more than enough capacity to cope. But emergency government procedures are dangerous instruments that should be applied for brief periods with utmost caution. When you centralise decision-making and bypass the checks and balances applied by Cabinet and the Parliament, things are bound to end in tears. A small cabal of politicians making decisions easily succumbs to groupthink, tunnel vision and hubris. Policy decisions of enormous consequences are unleashed untested without the refining fire of parliamentary debate and media scrutiny. Decisions made in the Prime Minister's office, let's face it, are never subject to the pub test, which is why normal government process should have resumed within weeks, not years, of the first outbreak. In July 2020, the Menzies Research Centre published a report by the noted economist Henry Ergas, together with Joe Brannigan. It recommended just that. It said emergency powers applied by state, territory and federal governments should be revoked by the end of September 2020 at the latest. It was, they wrote, the greatest public policy failure would be to retain the worldview of January to April 2020 when there was still very little information about how the global pandemic would play out. Well, our report fell on deaf ears. The government was too busy to listen. And there was nervousness that fulsome policy debate would create contrary messages. As indeed they would, because that's exactly what healthy debate is supposed to do. And so most of the emergency powers remained in place. In some cases, they remain in place to this very day. And the result? Well, it's the policy failure Ergas and Brannigan predicted. In the view of my next guest, we may have witnessed the greatest policy failure of our lifetimes. When the full history is written, as it must be, the error for which Mr Morrison has apologised is likely to be a mere footnote in the omni-shambolic, pan-governmental, technocratic mega-bungle of the last 30 months. The Morrison revelation should be just the start of the truth-telling, yet neither side of politics in either state or federal parliaments appears to want the type of inquiry we need. The reason is obvious. It's hard to imagine that a single politician or prominent public servant who had a hand in this would emerge unscathed. Some would be able to say that the decisions for which they're responsible were made in the fog of the pandemic and informed with imperfect information. Fair enough. Some might claim they acted out of abundance of caution to protect the public from a risk that wasn't fully understood. Again, fair enough. But a few, I expect, would be exposed as the power-hungry, arrogant or blundering fools that they were. And that wouldn't be a bad thing. But we must keep this in mind. The aim of the truth-telling should not be to humiliate, scapegoat or punish. It should be to learn from the failures so that we can do better, much better, next time.